Imagine a world where the dodo, the iconic symbol of extinction, returns to the lush forests of Mauritius. Well, that's a world that we live in, because Colossal Biosciences stands at the forefront of this vision, harnessing cutting-edge science to resurrect a species that has been lost for centuries. From decoding its genetic blueprint to pioneering reproductive technologies, Colossal is redefining what's possible in conservation, and in this video, we're going to dig into exactly how they're doing it. But first, let me tell you about the dodo. Endemic to the island of Mauritius and found nowhere else on Earth, the dodo was a unique flightless pigeon. Its appearance was quite distinct, a plump body covered in soft grayish feathers, short wings, incapable of flight mind you, and a large heavy beak. The living conditions on the island were so ideal that it essentially evolved to become flightless because it didn't need to fly any longer. Now, it wasn't massive compared to other extinct birds like the elephant bird, of which you can see that egg back there, which is absolutely massive, or the moa from New Zealand. Instead, this creature only weighed about 20 to 30 pounds. Female dodos would only lay about one egg per year, likely because it was under no stress to produce more because it had no real natural predators. Analysis done on dodo bone structure suggests that chicks hatch sometime in or around August at an average height of 8 inches. That's still really big for a freshly hatched bird. They grew very quickly into adulthood to prepare for cyclones that battered Mauritius between the months of November and March. The bigger the bird you are, the more prepared you are for a cyclone. Despite its rather comical appearance, the dodo played a crucial role in the ecosystem it was a part of. And as for what the dodo ate, well, its appetizer of choice was literal rocks, which probably didn't help dissolve its reputation and where the saying, "as dumb as a dodo," probably comes from. As a matter of fact, rocks were an essential part of the dodo's diet. When swallowed first, these stones helped grind up whatever followed. There would be fibrous fruits, nuts, seeds, bulbs, shellfish, even the occasional crab were just a few of the things that were key to the dodo's diet. And so by ingesting these rocks and having these rocks roll around in their stomach, it would actually aid in the digestion of these otherwise pretty hard to digest substances so that the dodo could then pass things through its system, which is a pretty clever evolutionary adaptation. So while it was using these stones to grind up things like crabs, seeds, and nuts in its stomach, the dodo would walk around and, like most birds, poop out things around the forest. Now, the dodo was an ecosystem engineer because it would poop out nuts and seeds and fruits that would then fertilize and germinate this forest, keeping Mauritius the incredibly healthy ecosystem that it used to be. So what happens when you remove the dodo? You remove an ecosystem engineer that helps pollinate, seed, and reproduce a healthy ecosystem, which is why it's so crucial to bring it back. So, what led to the extinction of this amazing bird? Unfortunately, as usual, the arrival of humans sealed the dodo's fate. As it lived in a relatively isolated environment with no natural predators, it essentially made them fearless and somewhat naive when humans arrived on the island in the late 16th century. Accounts from them tell of the birds approaching humans without fear, literally walking right up to them, again, because they had never been hunted or preyed upon, so they feared nothing. It's the same thing that we actually see today in the Galapagos Islands when you visit there and you walk up to the seals or the iguanas or even some of the birds, and they just sit there and look at you because they have no natural land predators. Fortunately, we protected those animals so well in the Galapagos that they haven't reached the same fate as the poor dodo. However, in the early 16th century, Dutch sailors and settlers who came to Mauritius found the dodo easy to catch and, of course, easy to eat. And they would just come by, bop them on the head, and cook them up and eat them. This was stupid because according to historical accounts, they apparently didn't even taste very good. They were just a useful and easy source of protein, which then brings up the question, why the heck do they keep killing them in the first place? Some accounts, old traditional accounts, actually state that killing them was sort of a Dutch sport, where when you were bored enough, you'd get a big old stick and go for a nice walk in your silly old school clothes and bop one on the head just to say you'd done it. Sadly, along with the hunting pressure, sailors introduced invasive species. I know, we always do it. They introduced things like pigs, rats, goats, macaques, and deer that all preyed upon dodo eggs or would crush them or outcompete them for food. And of all the species introduced by man, the black rat posed the biggest threat to the survival of the species, akin to the story of the Lord Howe stick insect, which I've talked about in other videos. Anyway, eventually the same storms that trapped settlers on the island drove them away. Sailors grew sick and weary in their perpetually drenched conditions, and when they fled, they left behind their animals upon exit. Within a century of human arrival on Mauritius, the dodo was extinct, gone forever by the 1660s. The implications of its extinction were profound, as it marked one of the earliest known cases of human-induced extinction. And get this, almost a third of Mauritius' native fruits are no longer being dispersed, as no animals are big enough to swallow their seeds and poop them out in the forest. So in an ideal world, in order to keep Mauritius's forests healthy and happy, you need a large animal responsible for pooping out these seeds, and yep, you guessed it, that used to be the dodo. And that's exactly why we need to bring the species back. Here's where Colossal steps in. Bringing back the dodo would be significant for several reasons. It would help restore lost biodiversity and ecosystems, filling niches that have been vacant since the bird's extinction. When people often think of the dodo, they think of a bird that went extinct many years ago, during the time of the dinosaurs. But that's not the case, and we actually have preserved dodo parts. And it's from one of those specimens, specifically one in the Natural History Museum in Denmark, that Colossal Chief Science Officer Beth Shapiro led a team to sequence and assemble the dodo's genome. The genome, which has been sequenced to a coverage of around 50x, is currently being analyzed by a team from the UCSC Paleogenomics Lab. And for an exclusive update for you guys, a team from Colossal just returned from an expedition to Mauritius to visit partners, the Mauritian Wildlife Foundation, as well as local government officials to discuss the project. And get this, the team led an excavation where they unearthed, wait for it, undiscovered dodo bones and specimens. This is huge because new evidence found from the excavation suggests that dodos also feasted on snails like ducks do, which is nuts because we had absolutely no idea of this before this recent Colossal expedition. This not only furthers our research, but also gives us valuable new insights into the history and biology of this iconic bird species. The team then toured several islands, including the elusive Round Island Reserve as a potential future rewilding location for the dodo. Now, you guys have probably heard me talking about Round Island before. I love the place, and it also happens to be the home of one of my favorite extinct species, the Round Island burrowing boa. But that's a story for another video. And I absolutely cannot believe that someday soon we'll get to see living dodos. Mind blown. This is literally the most iconic extinct animal in history. Everybody knows about it. Anybody you talk to has heard of the dodo, yet nobody alive today has ever seen one. Yet in our generation, thanks to the work by Colossal Biosciences, we'll actually get to see one again, and they'll be placed back in Mauritius to eventually help to repair that ecosystem. The work doesn't just stop with de-extincting a certain species. With all the avian reproduction technology that Colossal is developing to create the dodo, it paves the way to help other species too. While the dodo disappeared from Mauritius, the pink pigeon held on, partially because its flesh is toxic and causes stomach pain and vomiting, redirecting both human and animal predators towards a more palatable meal. But in 1994, there were only 77 pink pigeons left in the world. In addition to decimating factors like habitat loss, the species easily fell victim to genetic bottlenecking and fatal illnesses caused by parasites, which killed over half of all pink pigeon chicks born on the island. Right now, there's estimated to be roughly 500 pink pigeons left in Mauritius. Without human intervention, the pink pigeon is predicted to go extinct in the next 50 to 100 years because the existing population is significantly inbred. But here's where Colossal steps in. The Avian Genomics Group will identify lost diversity from historical samples and use gene editing technology to give key diversity back into the population. The Mauritian Wildlife Foundation is Colossal's on-the-ground local collaborator. So for those people out there who are going, why is all of this genomics work, all of this de-extinction, cloning work so important? Think about this. You can literally take an animal like the dodo that can repair an ecosystem and put it back to begin saving that ecosystem. Simultaneously, you can look at lost diversity from historical samples like the pink pigeon and put that diversity back into the gene pool to create offspring that are healthier, more robust, and more capable of surviving through a genetic bottlenecking so that they branch back out and don't disappear in the next 50 to 100 years. This is why this technology, this science, this field of de-extinction that Colossal Biosciences is pursuing is so incredibly important to the world in its current state so that we can combat diversity loss. And get this, after the models for rewilding an avian species are complete, Colossal will share the learnings worldwide for other de-extinction and rewilding efforts as part of its de-extinction toolkit. With Colossal working to de-extinct the dodo and save other beneficiary species like the pink pigeon, we as humans are righting our wrongs and working hard to restore the environment as a fragment of what it once used to be. Stay tuned for next month for the next video in this series where I'll be talking about a huge mythical animal that once roamed the frozen Arctic tundra. Do me a favor, like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.